What makes someone fake a cancer diagnosis? Is it the fame and the fortune that they'll get? Is it maybe the external validation they'll get and support that maybe they haven't had? In today's video, I want to dissect apple cider vinegar as requested by more than half of you in the community. So let's get into it. But before we begin, I am Cia, the transparent therapist, and I help women unpack trauma so that they can have longer lasting relationships with themselves, others, and Christ. Now, if you're new here, please hit the subscribe button if this sounds like something that you want to be a part of, because I always enjoy sharing this wealth of knowledge with y'all. And this right here is a perfect case study to highlight, and it was very entertaining at that. Now, for those of you who don't know, the show Apple Cider Vinegar on Netflix is about a woman named Belle, which is based on a true story, who faked a cancer diagnosis. Now, at first, I was not going to watch this because I was like, apple cider vinegar. I thought it was a documentary. And truth be told, I actually drink apple cider vinegar. Not for pleasure, though. It tastes quite. But Belle Gibson goes ahead and she fakes a cancer diagnosis. She became known for curing her terminal brain cancer through eating clean and alternative therapies. She's claimed to not have any doctors, or I should say no chemo, no real doctors. She just says like it's healthy food and positive mindset. And I guess it was like the perfect story to bring people in. All right. I have so many notes on this. All right. So we're going to try to get through as much as we can. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you what was really true from the story and what was fake. All right. Because after all, it is a dramatization of a real story. So Belle was able to build like this huge platform and started to have like this best-selling app. She had a cookbook. She had hundreds of thousands of followers hanging on her word, so much so that they would like try to follow the regimen in which she had. And ultimately, she was really hurting people. When the truth came out that Belle never had cancer, the world was like so furious, right? Here's the thing though. Do y'all think this was really about money? Or was there something deeper going on? Because for me, I felt there was something deeper going on a psychological basis. So let's start with the core question. Why would somebody lie about having cancer? Well, one explanation is a factitious disorder. I don't have a way to put it up on camera like I did with the last case study, but that's okay. I'm just going to explain to you because this is also known as Munchausen syndrome. And actually, I think they might have even mentioned it in the very first episode. And you might have missed it if you weren't paying attention. This basically says that somebody pretends to have a sickness just to gain attention and sympathy. And it has nothing really to do with money. And in this case, I do believe this is what was happening here. We are in a digital age, right? Or we were in a digital age when this happened as well. So with the rise of Instagram, TikTok wasn't there back then, but all these things, having external validation and support is something that people really gain. Why? Because sometimes they don't get it at home. And so when she had this factitious disorder, well, me saying she has this factitious disorder where people were hanging on to her very word, it only made sense that she starts to go down this rabbit hole. So as you were watching through episodes 1 through 3, we see that in the beginning, Belle didn't really have a lot of support, right? She was pregnant and she had only the support of her coworkers, and even her coworkers seemed to not really like her. Unfortunately, she ends up moving. And then she has this way of conning people into her life. The thing that we see a lot here is Belle has this like woe is me kind of attitude. At one scene, we see Belle realizing her rival, like her, let's call it like her internet rival, getting a new house. So she then says to her partner, see, I lost the baby, because they end up getting pregnant again after her first son. I lost the baby, and it's because I told you I need to be in this new house. And she makes this whole thing up to say like, this is why I lost the baby. We also understand that we don't know why she actually lost the baby, but her partner at the time, at least depicted on the screen, seemed like he might have had, I don't know, he was a little off, right? Maybe on the autism spectrum, not sure. I'm just kind of going by what I saw, but that's neither here nor there. A lot of people would say that she had some kind of personality disorder. And from what I saw too, I did see a hint of narcissistic personality disorder. Everything had to be about her. She had to crave the admiration. She always had a way of like love bombing a lot of people. So we see it with Chanel, which is someone who became her marketer, like social media manager. We see it with her partner, and his name is Neil. Maybe it's slipping my mind right now, where she love bombs him and she sees him and she kind of captures her in. And this is the person that becomes like a stepfather to her son. And she creates this grandiose version of herself. And sometimes people do it in a positive way. Sometimes people do it in a negative way. And unfortunately here, she did it in a negative way. She wants to be the hero. She wants to be the survivor. She wants to be the role model. Belle creates this character based off of Mila, right? Mila was diagnosed with cancer, and she would have like all these sores on her body. Well, Belle found her blog and became very infatuated with her. She even went out of her way to befriend her because in a sense she was trying to encapsulate her life and emulate it. Well, didn't really turn out well for her, because here now we know at the end Belle truly had something going on mentally. Although they don't really highlight that in the film, I myself can see that. We'll see Mila, she was an Australian. Actually, they were all Australian. It's just Belle moved to LA. But Mila still lived in Australia, and she was trying to fight her cancer naturally. Right? She was doing like coffee enemas. She would do these drinks. Unfortunately, Mila passes at the end of the film. Spoiler alert, sorry. But Belle was just like so intrigued with like how fast growing Mila was having or getting attention on the internet, and she tried to do the same thing. The only difference here is that Belle created an app and was kind of using, to my knowledge, I think she was using some of the things that she learned from Mila and putting it into her app. But it went as far as to go to retreats that Mila put on. And for me, I felt like she was trying to get as close to Mila as possible in order to really figure out her mannerisms and kind of copy her life. Another personality disorder we can say she probably had was the antisocial personality disorder. Because we see as Belle's truth is coming out, she starts to gaslight people all around her. She starts to manipulate people. She had a lack of remorse for people. She starts to collect money for a woman and her son who had cancer as well, and never gives out the money to the woman. Well, these investigators and reporters start to investigate her and reaches out to the family and says like, hey, did you ever get this money? Because they realized they could not prove Belle did not have cancer and without seeing results. But obviously HIPAA, right, doesn't really allow for someone to talk to a doctor to say like, hey, does this patient have XYZ? So they go away around it with doing like financial abuse, or she gets caught with like creating this financial fallacy because she was using the money. Again, I don't think this was about money. I think this is more about attention, because we move on into later episodes where we see her mother was sick. And so we see that as her mother becomes sick, they highlight that Belle has always been lying about things happening to her as early as age 12. She starts to say like, oh my gosh, I just had a heart attack or something along the lines. And Mila finds this on the internet. Good old internet keeps everything all the time. And so Mila's thinking like, hold on, does this girl even have cancer? Because at 12, she fakes having like a heart attack or some kind of heart thing. And I can't remember exactly what it was at this point, because I binged this whole show in probably like 3 or 4 days. Okay, at night when I should have been sleeping, I was binging it because it was just so good and I was so intrigued. I was just looking at Belle. In doing so, we see that Belle just didn't get the attention she needed, meaning that for Belle, she probably had an avoidant / disorganized attachment. And so when she's not experiencing the support she needs at home because her mom, I think, has like MS or something, she starts to experience this emotional neglect. How many times have we had people that we know have emotional neglect and they start to act out? You know, as children, if you can think back or rewind to childhood. Well, this is what was happening for Belle. She had like a very chaotic, unstable upbringing. Reports were suggesting that she had an absentee mother. She ran away from home and lived with some guy, right? Well, emotional neglect is real because we know that when a person is neglected, it can then spiral its way into some of these antisocial personality disorders. For some people, it also means becoming class clown. For others, it can be overachievers. We really don't know how the cookie crumbles with everyone, but we do know that the cookie crumbles. And when it crumbles, it affects others. So that's why I believe attachment theory is so important to recognize here. And if you guys are a true fan of the channel and the information given here, you'll see in other videos where I talk about attachment theory so much because it's a lens in which I see the world and I've been trained to see the world. And it makes so much sense to how people react in their everyday life. Well, as we unwind in the film or the series, we start to see the cognitive dissonance that comes in with Belle, right? Sometimes the brain starts to rewrite a story for us that Belle started to even believe her own lies. I think at some point, Belle believed she really did have cancer. Like she was going to the doctor, and I'm gonna have to look this up. She was going to the doctor and doing some weird thing. And I'm almost wondering if this guy in the film somewhat brainwashed her, because I want to say the guy in the film is probably the guy she spent time with at 12 years old, because running away at 12 is crazy. And so she starts to believe her own lies. I think she really believes she has cancer at this point, which says cognitively something is wrong. Because the more people questioned her, the more she doubled down. Not once did you see Belle crack until the very end. And I think Belle cracks at the very end because she is now in trouble for money and she needs to get away. And I think somebody offers her an interview for a set amount of money and she's like, okay, I'll take it. But even in the interview, she cannot wholeheartedly say, no, I did not have brain cancer. What she ends up saying is, no, I hope not. Which means that she's probably moving into a space where her brain believes or has held on to that lie so much because it's protected her this whole entire time. The protection she needed from feeling unloved, unsupported, right? Her mom, I want to say maybe between episodes 4 and 5, starts to tell people like, look, Belle has been a liar her whole life. But I think Belle had to lie because that's the way in which she protected herself. It's the way in which she felt secure. It's how she made her brain and body feel safe. Not saying that it's justified, but it's just what she had to do. So was Belle a manipulator and a fraud? Absolutely. But she was also someone who was deeply unwell. And I do believe it was driven by childhood trauma. I think her untreated mental health since being a child, because it wasn't really depicted, but I don't know if she had to take care of her mom. We know what happens to people who move into this parentified role and don't get to become a child or live out child responsibilities, which are none usually, they do become mentally unwell. She becomes desperate and needs validation. Now, this does not in any means excuse her action because there are real people with cancer that she affected, but I just wanted for y'all to understand the psychology behind her choices, right? And maybe even see if you can spot them within your own lives. Now, let's talk about what was real and what was fake, okay? Belle is a real person who definitely faked her brain cancer. You can go and look it up, right? She definitely built an empire with the app called The Whole Pantry. In reality, she actually only donated like a small fraction of the money that was promised. Mila, right, her rival, is not a real person, but it was inspired by someone named Jess Enough, right? She was a magazine editor who was diagnosed with cancer in her early 20s. Jess, just like Mila, right, in the film, initially followed conventional treatment, but later saw alternative therapy when her cancer returned. So Mila in the film also did the same exact thing. Okay, but her name here in real life is Jess, and maybe it's not like 100% spot on. Right? Chanel, Chanel is the one that blew the whole entire thing up. Chanel went to the investigators and was just like, look, I don't think she really has cancer, right? Chanel was based on someone named Chanel, who entrepreneur, and she became friends with Belle, and she eventually exposed the lies to the media. All right. Clive, his name is not Neil. I don't know why I called him Neil. Clive, that's who Belle's real boyfriend was. He was deeply involved in her brand's development. Whereas in the film, Clive he looked like a babysitter. Okay, he looked like he was a stepdaddy and a babysitter, but we're not gonna go there. In the film, that's what he was, but in real life, it says that he was deeply involved in the brand's development. Okay, Lucy. So in the film, Lucy had cancer and she discovered Belle and she saw her at a coffee shop and she's like, oh my gosh, gosh, you're Belle and I follow your stuff. She really had cancer. Lucy in real life is just a representation of the people Belle misled, but they said it was largely inspired by like Kate Thompson, right? Who was a patient who followed Belle's advice, and she was really believing that Belle would help her. So those are some of the discrepancies in the film. Where they are now, nobody knows where her son is. So her son was in the field. Belle really has a son. Nobody really knows where anyone is, to be honest. But at the end of the film, they said Google it. So I'm going to encourage y'all to do the same thing. Go ahead and Google what happened to the real people, because honestly, it's such a sad story. Very sad for Belle, more so, because this is what happens when mental health goes untreated. If you guys found this helpful at all, please hit the like button so people can find other breakdowns just like this. And again, I'm not just recapping what happens, but I'm giving you some mental health tips and understandings of what's happening in film, as it might relate to real life. So if you also found this helpful, I have something that's even more helpful in the description box. You can check it out below. It's called Cure My Anxiety, Lord. It's an ebook where I give you practical steps and tools and scriptures to help you move from a place of anxiety to a place of peace. Thank you so much for watching. I always thoroughly enjoy spending time with y'all. So walk good, keep the vibes high. I'll see you in the next video. So click the next video. Bye.